If your dresses still look flat even after you add colors, you're probably not adding shadows and highlights in the right way. Give me the next few minutes and I'll show you exactly how I shade this outfit in Procreate, from the pattern all the way to the final touch, and more importantly, the order I used to make it look dimensional instead of flat. I'm not just showing you what to do, I'll also show you how to think while you shade so your results actually improve. I'll use Office 66 for this tutorial. First, I'm going to add the pattern. Let's choose color number 1 from Busy Shading Palette 13. Then I'll use the Giraffe 1A brush. If you want this brush, you can find it along with 150 other brushes in my Procreate Studio Vault. I'll leave the link in the description. As usual, I'm naming this layer 1 Giraffe 1A. That's the color number and the brush name. Now I'll apply the pattern to the outfit. Now let's start shading. I'm using top front lighting as usual. I'll switch to my Moda For All shading brush. If you like this brush and the Busy Shading palettes, you can find them all in my Procreate Fashion Shading library. I'll link it below as well. I'm using color number 2 as my shadow tone, and I'll name this layer 2 since that's the color I'm using now. I'll keep the brush size at about 3%. Now, instead of randomly placing shadows and building a shadow map, that means we need to think about where is the light block and where does the fabric turn away from the light. So I'm going to follow the line walk first to define the outfit shape. Then I'll start placing shadows under the creases. I'll turn the line drawing layer on so you can see the line walk more clearly. Let's duplicate that layer and move it into the current dress group. Now I'll go back to layer 2 and keep building the shadows. This left bodice piece sits on top of the right one, so it casts a shadow onto the right side. So I'm adding shadows along this line walk. This area curves away from the light, so I'm adding shadows here too. Again, this bodice piece sits above the area underneath it, so it creates a cast shadow below. And this part is the underside of the fabric, so it should be completely dark because light can reach it. Here are the creases, so I'm placing shadows underneath them. I explain creases in more detail in my drape skirt tutorial, so if you want to understand folds and creases better, go check that out after this. I'll link it in the description. From here, I'll keep using the same logic and build up the shadows along the line walk, behind some of the creases, and underneath the creases. Here, notice that I'm not decorating, I'm just defining the structure of the outfit. Now I'm going to move this line drawing layer underneath the shadow layer. Then I'll keep adding shadows under the creases and along the line walk. Again, the right side of the skirt sits over the left side, so it casts a shadow underneath. So I'm following the line walk here with a shadow tone. Then I'll place shadow behind this crease too. Next, I'll keep adding shadows along the side. And again, underneath the creases. This crease is much bigger, so it behaves more like a fold, and because of that, I'm placing the shadow behind it. Then I'll add shadow under this crease. And for the rest, I'm just following the line mark. At this point, I don't really need the line drawing layer anymore because the shadow tone has already established the shape of the outfit. Now I'm going to blend this tone very lightly into the remaining areas so I don't lose the form. And you can already see the draw starting to look more dimensional. That's why I always recommend that beginners get comfortable with basic shading first before jumping into advanced textures, because advanced textures can slow you down. And if you're not getting the results you want, it's really easy to get frustrated and feel like giving up. I don't want that for you because I've been there too. So I really want you to focus on this stage first. I know basic shading isn't the most exciting part. It can feel repetitive and honestly a little boring. But once you get through this stage, realistic textures become so much easier. So stick with me. Now let's create a new layer, and I'll use color number 3 for the highlight. I'll name the layer 3. Then I'm reducing the brush size a little, and I'll apply the highlight as a very thin line along the line mark. Now let's add this highlight tone along the line mark. Now here's a key idea. Highlights are not random, they respond to the shadows. We place shadows under the creases, so now we are going to place highlights above them. That contrast is what creates depth. Then I'll softly blend this highlight into the surrounding area. Earlier, we added a cast shadow and the overlapping pieces like this one. So now I'm adding a very thin highlight line along the hem of that piece. I'll do the same thing here. Then I'll blend the color into the remaining areas. Here we have the creases again, so I'm adding highlights above them. I'm also adding highlights along this line mark. We place a cast shadow underneath this pattern piece, so now I'm adding a very thin highlight line right along the edge. I'll do the same along the hem. Let's repeat that again on the left side. Then I'll keep adding highlights above the creases. And finally, I'll blend the color into the remaining areas. So let's recap this step. We add highlights above the creases. We also add thin highlights along edges where fabric faces light. And finally, we blend the highlight tone softly into the surrounding areas. If the shadows define the structure, highlights reveal it. Now we are at the final touch. I'm starting with the highlight tone, but this time I'm using color number 1. Then I'll blend it into the previous highlight tone anywhere I want a little more brightness. Now I'm going back to layer 2 and picking the shadow tone again, color number 2. Then I'm deepening some of the areas where I already placed the shadows before, along the cast shadow areas, along the sides, and underneath this pattern piece. I added too much here, so I'm just going to undo that and add a little less. Then I'll keep deepening the sides, the cast shadow areas, and the places where this shadow tone was already walking. So it's really just about reinforcing the depth that's already there, and this is what pushes the drawing from okay to polish. And here's the final result. This works because everything follows a clear order. Shadow defines the structure first, then highlights respond to that structure, and the final touch adds depth. So nothing is random, and that's why the dress reads dimensional instead of flat. If you want to make this easier to practice, I break this exact order down into a simple shading checklist inside my ebook, From Ugly Drawings to Beautiful Dresses. So you're not jumping between random tutorials, you're following one clear system. So next time your shading looks off, just ask yourself, did I follow the right order? Because once your order is right, your drawings start to make sense.